Why is it that the American people pretty much don't care about the political status of most countries outside the United States, including Ukraine, but on Capitol Hill, the Democrats are completely head over heels for Ukraine. They all changed their their Twitter and Facebook bios to include the Ukrainian flag for some reason. Absurd, by the way. You're an American. You should have the American flag in your bio, not the flag of any other foreign nation, no matter how sympathetic we might be with that nation. But a lot of Republicans too, though. The whole Republican establishment is gaga over Ukraine. Mitch McConnell, Senate Minority Leader of the Republicans in the Senate, has said that the top priority for Republicans is Ukraine.
Making sure the Defense Department can deal with the major threats coming from Russia and China, providing assistance for the Ukrainians to defeat the Russians. That's the number one priority for the United States right now, according to most Republicans. That's sort of how we see the challenges confronting the country at the moment.
That's the top issue, according to Mr. Cocaine himself. So what does this show? What it shows is not just that those guys on Capitol Hill are totally crazy. There are a lot of things, but they're not totally crazy. They usually have a reason for doing what they're doing. They are very rational actors, politicians in both parties, inasmuch as they're very, very good at keeping themselves in power. They have an uncanny ability for cold calculation. So what is the calculation here on Ukraine? I think it shows you what a lot of people have suspected from the beginning, which is that all this talk about the independence and sovereignty of Ukraine, that's a bunch of nonsense. Ukraine is a border state, a border nation. It has been one for a long time. It is a battleground for fights between the East and the West, between Russia and Europe and the United States. And the reason that this war broke out in the first place is because in Ukraine 10 years ago, you had a pro-Russian leader, and the U.S. didn't like that very much. And so Western powers put pressure on Ukraine and helped to fund and encourage discontent in Ukraine that did already exist, that ultimately led to the Maidan Revolution and ousted the pro-Russian leader and put in a more pro-Russian leader, ousted that guy. It's very confusing when you're talking about Ukraine. The Maidan Revolution then led to a more pro-Western government in Ukraine. Then you started seeing a lot of talk about Ukraine joining the European Union, Ukraine joining NATO. Russia said that would be an unacceptable security risk to have NATO come that close to its borders in that important a country. And so then you saw Russia annex parts of Ukraine. This is going back now 8 years. And then you saw the major war break out earlier this year in Ukraine. And what this tells me is Ukraine is not viewed as an independent nation, obviously by Russia, or by the United States and Europe. Ukraine is being viewed right now as a theater of empire. Russia says it openly. The U.S. and the West say it implicitly. When we say that Ukraine is the most important issue for Americans, what we're saying is that the American Western Empire is very important. The American world order, where we are the top dog and we are governing the rules of the world, is very, very important. And I'm not even disputing that. That is the current world order that we have. And they're saying we cannot allow Russia to encroach on Ukraine. Why? Not because Ukraine is this absolutely sovereign, independent nation. No, because Ukraine is a part of the broader imperial project for the U.S. and the West. And we all know that to be the case. I'm not even knocking it. I'm not attacking that. I'd rather we run the world than the Russians run the world or China run the world. But that's what it is. It is an imperial battle. We like to think that we're living in the new modern times. We're so different from all those terrible old state actors in the past. Remember when they fought wars of empire and land conquest? We're doing the exact same now, because that's a fact of politics. That is just how people interact in the world. And that's what we're seeing. That's what Mitch McConnell means when he says it's the most important thing. It's the most important thing to what? The American nation? I don't think so. I think it's the most important thing to the American empire. Now, Rand Paul would disagree. Rand Paul, who is much more interested in pulling back American influence abroad and focusing in on the problems that we've got here at home, he asks the question, where do the real threats to America lie?
Brought with me the Omni, 4,155 pages. When was it produced? In the dead of the night, 1:30 in the morning when it was released. But what's the clamor? The clamor is to vote. Vote now. Let's get it done. Why are you standing in the way of spending? Well, the real question is this. What is more dangerous? Are we at risk for being invaded by a foreign power if we don't put $45 billion into the military? Or are we more at risk by adding to a $31 trillion debt? I think the greatest risk to our national security is our debt. The American people don't want this. They're sick and tired of it. They're paying for it through the nose with inflation. Adding $1 trillion to the deficit will simply fuel the fires that are consuming our wages and consuming our retirement plans. It's a terrible system. Someone needs to stand up. We're standing up, and we're going to say no.
Preach. Preach, Rand. What's amazing about Rand's statement here is that he actually, I believe, got the number wrong on military spending. He referred to the $45 billion number instead of the $76 billion number. I think he confused the boost to American military spending with the boost to Ukraine spending. And it's not a knock on him. One, it's very confusing and the reports are a little bit ambiguous. And it shows you the heart of the problem, which is that the Dems drop this 4,000 plus page bill and they say, okay, you got to vote on it in 3 days, where even a United States senator doesn't get a chance to vote on that. And when you look at the boost to military spending, you got boost to military spending for our country, boost to military spending for other countries. And they say, without this, without the $76 billion extra dollars that we get in American military spending, the country is going to be at existential risk. I don't know. I think Rand Paul is right. I think that our debt poses a far larger long-term risk than some marginal increase in defense spending. I remember 10 years ago, Mitch Daniels, then the governor of Indiana, a lot of people thought he was going to run for president. He said, we are facing a new red menace. This time it's not the commies, it's not the Soviets exactly, it's the debt. It's a red menace consisting of ink. If we manage our own country in such an irresponsible way that we become more and more dependent on China to pay for all of our flights of fancy, and we open up our borders and we allow domestic discord to tear our country apart, then Russia's going to be the least of our worries, guys. We've got a lot more problems a lot closer to home. We've also got a magician coming up on the member block right now, a magician who pulled off one of the most impressive magic tricks of the year. Go check it out. If you're not a member, you got to join. Click the link in the description and join us.